Hey everyone, Austin here again with another Let's Play video. Today it's going to be HyperZone for the Super Nintendo. This is a very early Super Nintendo game. One of those ones that you could probably argue is more of a tech demo than an actual game. And the reason I say that is this game is actually very basic. Similarly to F-Zero, but F-Zero to me, the gameplay just really hits home. Whereas this is just kind of like, move around in circles, shoot. And that's it. That's the whole game, pretty much. So what you see here in the demo, that's going. This is the entire game. It's probably going to take us about a half an hour to get through this. And you know, if you've never played this before, don't let me get you down. Like, this is actually, it's still a pretty fun game. But it's not going to, you know, like rock your world or anything like that. It's not going to blow you away. It's not going to be addictive like, say, Star Fox is or something like that. But yeah, we're gonna go through this game. It's not too difficult. We should be able to go through it without continuing or anything like that. We'll see what happens. And as usual, I'll explain the mechanics and things like that, and sort of explain the boss patterns and so forth as well. So, but before we jump into it, as usual, I want to give a big shout out to my current Patreon backers. So they're gonna flash by the screen. Thank you guys, as always, for your continued patronage. I really appreciate it. Also, the recent live stream super chatters are gonna flash by as well. Basically, I do weekly live streams, and people can donate directly there, so thank you guys for your patronage as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the game. You basically have normal and reverse here. This is just your steering, basically your movement, so you can reverse the controls if you want to, if you're used to holding down to go up as opposed to up to go up. And here we go. So, you know, there are like 7 or 8 areas in this game, and we're just going to basically go through all of them. You start off relatively basic here. All you can do is just shoot in the beginning. Later on in the game, you'll get a different ship, you'll upgrade, and you'll be able to do a charge attack, which is very handy. It's a lot more powerful. It cuts through multiple objects and enemies. I'm going to say objects a lot because look at these. These don't really look like enemies, but they are. They're inanimate objects that you can shoot and get points for. But the charge attack will let you go through multiples of those in one fell swoop, which is nice. So that comes a few stages in, and after every stage, almost every stage, I think you get an upgraded ship. But for the most part, it's mainly just, you know, it's a visual upgrade for the most part. It's not much of an actual gameplay upgrade, unfortunately. So you'll notice that this game has tracks on the tops and bottom of the screen. Really cool visual effect. But if you go outside the track, you'll actually take damage like this. And your health is denoted in the top left-hand portion of the screen. And also, very much like F-Zero, you've got these recharge pads. So we're going to try to cross over those as many times as we can. But this, you know, I'm making some comparisons to F-Zero. This really is nothing like F-Zero outside of using the, you know, the floor effects with mode 7. I think it's mode 7. Might be a different mode. I don't remember. But using the floor effects like this to give like a three-dimensional vibe, a three-dimensional viewpoint. But really, this is an on-rail shooter. This is not a racing game. Although I guess it kind of does have some racing elements in that, you know, you have to stay on the track and whatnot. So that is kind of interesting, but at its core, it's an on-rail shooter. So if you've never played on-rail shooters are basically games where you're just forced down a select path, or a specific path. You shoot stuff, you try not to die, like Star Fox, Panzer Dragoon, stuff like that. Those are basically on-rail shooters, whether you knew it or not. And that's exactly what HyperZone is. It's a very bare-bones on-rail shooter. And here's our first boss fight. So for a lot of the bosses, you can basically just go around in circles, and they'll just try to shoot, you know, wherever you were just a moment ago. But you'll notice that the bullets aren't really even coming close to me at all. So, you know, very basic stuff here, basic strategies, nothing too terribly involved. Now, there are a couple of bosses later on in the game where there are specific strategies you have to play by. But for these earlier bosses, you can just run around in circles like this, and I'm just going to play it safe and just, you know, take forever to kill that guy. Now, you do get extra lives in this game, so your stock is in the top left-hand portion of the screen. Those are your lives. So right now I have 2 lives. Your scores in the top right-hand portion of the screen. And I think after every 30,000 points or so, you get another extra life. So the idea for me, in terms of, say, 1 credit clearing this, is to get as many extra lives as I can, and obviously die as few times as I possibly can as well. So we'll kind of see how that goes. And notice how I'm just moving around in circles. We're going to be doing a lot of that in this game. Although this level is actually kind of interesting because you've got these flames on the ceiling and the floor. They actually go up vertically. So you do actually have to position yourself properly. Now you can also press the B button to brake, as I just did there for a moment. And what's interesting about this game is you can't permanently brake. Otherwise you will start taking damage. If you slow down in this game, you take damage, which is kind of an interesting mechanic. I'm not going to demonstrate that, but don't slow down too much in this game, otherwise you'll start losing health really, really quickly. And one strategy I like to do in this game is to try to stay on the biggest path I possibly can, because you'll find that, you know, if you're flying along the really thin paths, you don't have that much room to dodge. Remember, if you go off the course, you start taking damage really, really quickly. So I like to stay to the biggest path absolutely possible, so I have the most room to dodge. But in this case, I'm going to come over here because I do see a shield pad. Let's slow down just a little bit, just like that. So we got our shield back thanks to that. I took a little bit of damage to get it, but I got all of my health back, so not really a big deal. If you really wanted to, you could also just try to not shoot anything if you really wanted to, but that kind of, you know, takes away half the fun of the game, so I definitely like to shoot stuff. That's why I play these kinds of games. I like shooting things. But if you wanted to do like a pacifist run, you know, the game totally allows you to do that. It's not like you're forced to kill things in this game until you get to a boss fight. After, you know, once you get to a boss, obviously you have to kill the boss. But if you wanted to play pacifist, you know, up to that point, you can. Now, as far as this game's difficulty goes, I really don't think it's that difficult. The first time I ever actually played through this game all the way, I basically did, I think, a 1 credit clear my very first try. So it wasn't, you know, that was crazy to me. Like, wow, okay, that was actually a really easy game. Normally these on-rail shooters I do have trouble with in the beginning. A lot of these games require you to learn, you know, boss patterns and things like that. But this game was super basic. It was just move around in circles, and hope for the best, basically, and that's it. Now, I'm doing a bad job of actually hitting this guy, but I'm not really worried about it. I'm just kind of zoning out here as I'm trying to think of what to say in this Let's Play. But there we go, we got him. There's going to be a similar boss later on. He's going to be a blue sort of snake, or whatever you want to call them. And he's going to actually go through the floor, so you actually have to sort of predict where he's going to go. But this guy was just going all over the place, you know, Space Harrier style, which is coincidentally another on-rail shooter. That's great, actually. I do recommend checking out Space Harrier if you haven't played it before. The first one specifically, not the second one. But here's our ship upgrade. Our little dude's gonna fly out and go in. Nice little graphical touch there where, you know, your character gets out of his existing ship and then goes into the next one, which is pretty cool. I do like little touches like that. You know, HAL Laboratories, they were really good about stuff like that. And they basically got absorbed by Nintendo. They're now owned by Nintendo. They've been owned by Nintendo for a really long time. But, you know, these are the guys that were, you know, responsible for like the Kirby games and things like that. So, you know, if you guys have played those, you know that, you know, they're really good at attention to detail. And these guys are coming up from behind and slamming into me. That's really frustrating. I hate it when games do that, where enemies just kind of like come up from behind and ram into you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do outside of just hoping for the best. So that was a little frustrating to me. But look, I actually have a charge attack now, so I can actually hold down the button and charge. Although the charge is a little slow, but it's definitely worth doing. So I have an option here to go over to the side paths, and those are, you know, shield replenishments, but again, I'd rather just stay in the thickest path possible, because it's a whole lot safer. I do like some of the music in this game. It does get kind of funky, actually. It's got, you know, some good grooves and stuff like that. You know, I really like early Super Nintendo music in particular. A lot of it was kind of like upbeat. A lot of it is energetic. It's really good stuff, and this game definitely has some solid tunes as well. Yeah, really love me some early Super Nintendo music. It's, you know, it's very distinct compared to a lot of other game music. I guess you could say that about almost every game platform out there, but there's a very distinct style to Super Nintendo, early Super Nintendo music, though. You know, from like the funktastic style of that you hear in certain games, to the overall audio quality. Like, it's clearly sampled, but it's not, you know, like CD quality or anything like that. Or PlayStation or Saturn quality. It's kind of like in this in-between point in video game console audio history, where you can tell it's still kind of cheap, but it's also really cool at the same time. It's hard to describe. I have no idea what I'm saying here. But you know what's funny about this boss? If you look at that, it's actually the Super Nintendo button layout, controller button layout, and you basically have the same colors as the Super Famicom controller buttons. So the Super Famicom controller in Japan actually had colored buttons, whereas well, I mean, I guess technically we had colored buttons too in North America, just different colors. But you had, you know, yellow, red, blue, and green buttons on the Japanese Super Famicom controller, basically the Japanese Super Nintendo controller, which I'm actually using one right now. I actually bought a new old stock Super Fami controller last year, and that's actually what I'm using now. I don't recommend getting a Super Famicom controller, personally speaking, just because, you know, it's got like a 3-foot long cable, if that, and so you have to sit really close to your console, whereas in North America, the controller cords are much longer. Also, the Super Famicom buttons are all convex, so basically they're rounded on the tops, whereas in North America, the X and Y buttons are both concave, so they dip down, and I feel that's a little more natural for me personally. I mean, most controller buttons I've ever used, you know, from the Sega Genesis controller buttons to the NES controller buttons to the Saturn, all have, you know, concave dips to them. It just feels much more natural because your fingers are convex. You know, your fingertips are rounded on the ends. They're not perfectly flat. And so having something that sort of dips in a little bit actually lets your fingers rest on the buttons a little bit easier. And the Super Famicom controller, being more like, say, the PlayStation buttons, where they're convex, and makes it, I don't know, maybe it's just because I played so many consoles with concave buttons that it just feels odd to me. But that's going to be a preference thing, I think. That's going to be a preference thing for the most part. But the controller length is the big issue for me when I'm using the Super Famicom controller. I always bust it out every now and then when I'm streaming on Twitch, because I'm like, oh yeah, new old stock, the buttons are perfect, you know, and that's absolutely true. Like, this thing is snappy as all hell. Like, you know, it's never been used before, up until, you know, it got to me. And but the short controller length and the convex buttons can definitely throw me off quite a bit. So but it's funny, that little rant actually stemmed completely from the last boss we just played, because it was basically the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom controller button layout. It was pretty funny. There's some clever bosses like this in the game. There's some really basic bosses as well. Just like, ooh, here's a floating snake blob thingy-majig. And that's it. You know, lots of really basic bosses, but there are some funny ones when you look at them. And here's our next boss. So notice that we also got an upgraded ship again, so we can charge up. Our charge shot is actually a little bit larger now, which is quite nice. So you don't have to be quite as accurate with it to do damage. So we're gonna go ahead and just sort of charge up over and over here. And like a lot of on-rail shooters, and a lot of games in general, is you know you're doing damage when the enemies blink. And when they don't blink in this game, you're not doing damage. So keep that in mind when you're playing games like this. Not just this, but other games. You know, if enemies blink when they take damage, then if they're not blinking, they're not taking damage. So don't keep shooting them when they're not blinking, because you're not doing anything. You're just kind of wasting your effort. Wasting your breath. Man, I really like the visuals in this game, though. I mean, some of the Mode 7 based games on Super Nintendo are very, like, gimmicky And this one kind of falls into that camp, but what I really like about this is the mirrored floor and ceiling effect. Just not many games did that at all. And the way they sort of tied in the gameplay with that too, I think is very unique. So you really feel like there's a floor and a ceiling in this game when you're playing it. Like as I go up, I feel like I'm getting closer to the ceiling. When I get to the floor, I feel like I'm getting closer to the floor. And it's a very simple and gimmicky effect, but it's effective. So that's definitely one thing I can give HyperZone. Its sense of, you know, depth is very solid. You know, it's not that much, you know, higher than a tech demo when it comes to the gameplay, but you know, from a visual perspective, it's simple yet effective, and I like that. So we're just gonna run around in circles here, nothing crazy. But what I really should be doing is charging more often, just because we're gonna have multiple enemies on screen. It's a whole lot easier to deal with multiple enemies on screen when you've got the charge attack. And there we go, just slicing and dicing through enemies. Nothing crazy. So we've actually got 5 lives right now, which is great. So, you know, as far as like a 1 credit clear goes, this is actually looking pretty good. Oops. See, what I did there is I slowed down to try to get the, you know, the shield replenishment, but I ended up taking some hits in the progress. In the progress? In the process. So it basically, you know, it countered out the shield replenishment I did get, unfortunately. Not a big deal. Now, what's actually kind of interesting about this game, and this is sort of a real missed opportunity in my opinion, but when you beat the game, it actually loops. You actually do a second loop. You retain your score, you retain your lives, and interestingly, you can't get any more lives after you do that. Once you get to the end of the game, I don't know if there's like a score cap as far as extra lives are concerned, or if it's once you get to the final level you can't earn anymore. I'm not sure what it is. If someone out there can clarify, let me know. But when you loop the game, it doesn't actually get more difficult. You can try to go through it a second time. If you beat it a second time, which I did on stream, you don't get a different ending. The enemies aren't really faster. The bullets might be a tiny bit faster, but there's not really more of them, or not in a way that's going to really affect your gameplay. So it's actually kind of interesting. The game throws you into a second loop. You can't earn any more extra lives, but it's not really any more difficult. So there's no reason to do a second loop in this game. And if you beat the second loop, it'll throw you into a third loop, and it doesn't get any more difficult. So it's a real missed opportunity for some replay value for, I'd say, you know, more experienced or higher level players that really, you know, want to seek out a challenge. And that was the boss I was talking about, where he goes through the floor and ceiling. So you have to actually try to hit him as he crosses over, because a lot of times he'll actually stay outside the track. But I was just talking and just kind of hitting him. I wasn't even explaining about him, or even thinking about him for that matter. But we were still getting him because he kept crossing over, which was nice. Now this level is actually a bit of a pain. These things you have to really watch out for, and it's difficult to really figure out where you are in the screen. This is definitely something I don't really enjoy here, because it's just tough to see. You know, if you're gonna get hit by these guys. There are some that look like you can go under them, but you'll try to go under them and still take a hit. Like when I first got here, I actually took a lot of damage on those things, so it was really frustrating. So what I prefer to do is to try to use my brakes on that part and just play it really safe. And here's a shield pad again. There we go, very nice, full health. Yeah, as far as the difficulty is concerned in this game, there are some parts that you are gonna have to memorize. In order to, you know, in order to get them damage, in order to get through them damage-free. If only I could talk today. But for the most part, the difficulty is actually really light in this game. I think a lot of people should be able to finish this game without too much trouble. And if you're shooting stuff, you're going to be working towards extra lives as well. Again, we still have 5 extra lives here. Or technically 3 extra lives on top of our default 2, because you do start with 2 lives, and we've earned 3. And we're probably going to earn another one here, assuming the extra lives don't cap out. They might cap out. Maybe that's what's keeping me from earning further extra lives. Nope, I just got another one. Alright, let's just try to fly up. And do not fly off the course. I'm pretty sure you can attack these things, but it's not worth going off the course to try to attack them. Ooh, took another hit. And there we go. So now that we're in the danger zone, we're getting really close to dying. And the game is one of those, it's gonna let you know. There we go. Alright, we got most of our health back. Very good, very good. Alright, boss time. So the music fades when you go into a boss. And this is very similar to the first boss fight. And just like the first boss fight, just move around in circles. So on a future level, on the next level or two, we're going to actually go through a boss rush. We're going to have to fight all the previous bosses again. Not on the next level. The next level, I think, is the organic stage. You fight basically like a set of brains as the boss fight. That's actually an interesting boss that we're going to come up against because I'll explain it when we get there, but it's definitely different than what you are used to leading up to that point. Yeah, Bioplant. This is the more of the organic stuff here. We're gonna fight more enemies that are organic, less in terms of like inanimate objects. One of the things I don't like about this game is you fight so many enemies, and these are things I don't normally think about, but you know, this can definitely have an impact on your enjoyment of a game. Maybe subconsciously, but in this game, you're fighting so many inanimate objects, it just doesn't really feel good to fight them. You're not, fighting, ships that are flying at you for the most part. You're not fighting, enemies that look like they can really kill you. You're fighting blocks and triangles and things like that. It's really kind of odd. But on this level, you're actually fighting things that look like, oh, they might actually do some damage to you. These guys, they wake up basically, and then they fly at you. They've got eyes and mouths and whatnot. Which definitely makes the enemies, despite how easy they are, feel a little more threatening, in a way. Although you've got these cell-looking things here that they don't look very threatening either. Very much like Life Force. There's a lot of that in the classic Life Force on NES. But a lot of enemies in that game actually do look threatening. Alright, so let's come over here. We don't want to cross those paths because we'll take some damage. Yeah, that's definitely one thing I don't really care for in this game, is just shooting a lot of inanimate objects. Just doesn't feel all that satisfying, especially with the gameplay being as basic as it is. You know, you've got this attack, and then you've got this attack. And that's it! That's everything in HyperZone. This part's actually kind of interesting, though, because you're forced to take damage here. So what I'm going to do is just try to keep moving here, whether it's up or down, so I don't run into objects, and I constantly go over those health replenishment paths, the recharge pads, and here's our boss fight. So this guy, you can only attack when he's in movement. So right now you can't hit him. So you have to hit him when he's in motion. So notice when I hit him, he's not going to blink unless he's in motion. So I'm just going to wait here. Alright, there we go. Doing okay, doing okay. Yeah, this boss actually took me a while to figure out. I was like, man, why is this guy taking so long to die? It's taking a very, very long time. But it was because I kept hitting him when he was just sitting still. When he's just sitting there, like, you know, floating around in circles, you can't do any damage to him. And, you know, every other boss fight up to this point, like, that's the best time to attack the boss. But this boss is the exact opposite. You can only hurt him when he's in motion. There we go. Alright, done. Alright, so this should, I think, actually take us to our final stage. And the final stage is basically a boss rush. We have to fight every boss. Every boss or almost every boss. I don't know which it is, but we're going to find out. We're going to fight a lot of bosses again, and then we're going to fight the final boss afterward. Kind of a cool background, too. I really like the backgrounds in this game. Some have, you know, some interesting nods as well. Like the very first level, I didn't explain when we were playing it, but it's actually comprised of Tetris blocks. So if you look at it closely, you'll see the square, the long piece. You'll see everything from Tetris. It's great. So nice little nod there. And here we go. So we get to fight all of our bosses again. Can you believe it? We haven't actually died yet. I'm actually kind of surprised. Normally I die at least once or twice getting to this point in the game. There are a couple of tricky parts in the game. But, you know, that really goes to show, like, sort of the lack of difficulty in this game. I haven't even really been thinking about this game or thinking about strategy or anything like that. Yet I've been just kind of like plowing through everything without too much trouble. And here's our Super Famicom controller faceplate again. So we're just going to move around in circles and just use our charge attack. Notice that the charge attack has a really nice large hitbox to it. So even if like you sort of hit the guy on the side, chances are you'll still actually do damage. And we're just going to shoot like this. Once you destroy the, like, the buttons that are flying around him or floating around him in a circular fashion, he'll basically just stop there and just move forward and backwards, and you can just get lots of free hits off. So one thing I did want to mention is that this game actually has a an unlockable, not unlockable, well, I guess technically unlockable, but you have to enter a cheat code. For a stereoscopic 3D mode. Apparently, I guess HAL thought that there were going to be some, you know, 3D glasses released for the Super Nintendo, and there weren't, unfortunately. They never came to fruition. There were 3D glasses for the Famicom in Japan, the original Famicom, but not the Super Famicom. But you can still unlock the stereoscopic 3D mode. So technically, if you hacked up a set of stereoscopic 3D glasses, I would assume, say, like the shutter glasses for, say, the Master System, you could actually play this with the 3D effect, and I bet it would be really awesome. But if, you know, if you're not an electrical engineer, basically, you'll never do that, and so you'll never experience it. But you can activate the cheat to unlock it. So it's kind of, you know, it's fun looking into games like this, or games in general, and seeing what is sort of under the hood that wasn't really, seeing like different features and things like that were planned, but never actually really put into effect. And so for like the stereoscopic 3D mode in this, you know, it basically hinted at there were going to be 3D glasses for the system, but they never came to be. So it's really cool stuff. Alright, there we go. We got that guy. Alright, only a few more bosses to go, and then we're on to the final boss. Notice that you don't have any recharge pads in this one, so if you're trying to do like a one life clear or something, you gotta be really careful on this stage. And here's our brain boss again, so just like before, only shoot him when he's in motion. I'm just constantly moving around in circles just to play it safe, because he does shoot every now and then. Seems like he mainly shoots when he's in motion. Alright, almost there. Almost at the end of the game too. We're almost there, guys. So if you've stuck with me this long, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have enjoyed this playthrough so far. So what's kind of interesting is you actually fight these bosses out of order. So you don't fight them in the exact same order you did before. That is kind of a nice touch. You know, I'm glad I'm finally doing a Let's Play of this game, too. Like, it's a game I've sort of played on and off over the years. I never finished it until this past year, actually. But I've always had it on my Let's Play list. I was like, I know I can get through that. I know I can do a Let's Play of it. But I kept putting it off because the game, it doesn't click with me that much. Like, it's not like Star Fox where I just have a blast playing it every time I fire it up. But I am glad I'm doing this. I'm glad you guys get to see a full playthrough of this. If you're an actual hardware collector, you know, actual cartridge collector, this game's not very expensive. It's one of the cheaper games in the system. So if you want to pick up a copy, it is cheap out there. Alright, so this guy, this is our final boss here, and he basically shoots, and he moves back and forth, and what you have to watch out for is when he tries to go off the screen just like that, and then he'll come back on the screen. So he's got two opportunities to hit you there by slamming into you. So you basically need to watch out for that. Alright, now he's gonna like jump forward just like that, and he's gonna come back like so, and it's just rinse and repeat. Alright, and so this part, he likes to he just wants to touch you. He just wants to hug. Kind of a gross looking thing too, actually. So now he's gonna sort of zoom back out, just like that. Now we can go ahead and just try to hit him again. Just keep walking, walking, keep flying in a circular fashion. And pretty much he doesn't go off the screen anymore. He's always on the screen, but he's got these really fast bullets, so you need to just constantly stay in motion. Are we gonna one life clear this game? Because we haven't died yet. I think we're gonna one life clear this, guys. I actually haven't done that yet. I haven't done a one life clear. That's... Ooh, that was close. Uh-oh. Whoa, one life clear. I was actually getting... Right as I was talking about that, I was like, uh-oh. We're about to die. That's not good. It's like right as I say that, bam, I die. I think we did a one life clear on that, guys. That's actually kind of cool. I haven't done that before, so... and that's it. That is HyperZone. These are the credits. Believe it or not, for all the inanimate objects in the game, they all have names. C04, 10, Box, Board Y. Really, really great names. Dislike, Zunko, Board B, Hidharma, Xander. really riveting stuff here, guys. This is your ending, basically. There's not much more to it. They just basically go, you know, and tell you all the enemy names, and that's it. So that is HyperZone. I hope you guys enjoyed this playthrough. I railed on this game quite a bit over the course of this playthrough, as I do with some of these games I play. But it is a moderately enjoyable game. Like I said, it's a cheap game if you collect physical carts. I think it's worth checking out. It's not gonna, you know, break the bank. And if you got a flash cart like me, you know, give it a try. Fire it up, see if you enjoy it. You might actually enjoy it a lot more than I do. Because it does look nice. It's, you know, it's got a relatively inoffensive soundtrack. You know, the sounds aren't really grating or anything like that, and it is definitely pleasing to look at. And it plays well. It doesn't really slow down. The frame rate's always rock solid in this, so it's a technically sound game. It's just, it's not that exciting. You know, the gameplay, you only have two forms of attack, and your second form of attack you don't even get until like level 3. It's just basic. It's very basic, and the gameplay, unlike say F-Zero, is not very deep, but it can still be moderately enjoyable, so maybe check it out. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and just leave you with that. We got more credits rolling out here. Once again, thanks to all the Patreon backers and super chatters that are supporting this channel. And thanks to everyone that is watching as well. If you're brand new to my channel, consider subscribing. I've got a ton of Let's Plays and many, many more to come. So feel free to sub and, you know, check out what I've got here. Also, thanks to everyone that's already, you know, followed as usual. Thanks for your continued support, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy these videos. So until the next one, take it easy.